Tonight, Supergirl shows us that anything is possible with the power of love. Birds of Prey feels like it skipped an issue and yet got nowhere all at the same time. And Legion of Superheroes is the most straightforward it's ever been, so I will be very straightforward in my disdain. All that and more tonight on the Not So New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 24 of the Not So New 52. I am your host and happy day after Valentine's Day for everyone who celebrates it. I myself spent the entire day reading, recording, and editing for this show. In fact, it's still Valentine's Day while I'm recording this, but you know, happy for all of you in love out there. Anywho, I took a look what went on 10 years ago in DC news. Not a whole lot, just some announcements of what Arrow's going to be, how they are introducing a black Superman into Action Comics soon. There's a Batman annual, that's going to be fun, and a whole bunch in the second wave, which we already covered. So not a lot going on there. Overall, quiet week, only 13 comics, and I guess I'll just list those off to you now, because why not? So February 15th, 2012 holds the number 6 issues of Batman, Birds of Prey, Catwoman, Nightwing, Red Hood and the Outlaws, Supergirl, Green Lantern Corps, Captain Atom, DC Universe Presents, Wonder Woman, Blue Beetle, and Legion of Superheroes. Additionally, we have the number 5 issue of My Greatest Adventure. So that's all we're going to be covering in this show, and frankly, there's not really much else to talk about, so I suppose let's just jump right into it with our first comic of the week. Batman number 6, written by Scott Snyder, art by Greg Capullo. We left off last issue with Batman being stuck in this labyrinth and then being attacked by one of the Talons in the end with a blade pretty much straight through his stomach. This issue, pretty much all one fight scene, like it's the big climax more or less. So, picks up right where we left off. Talon has stabbed him through the stomach and goes through the whole spiel of, oh, Batman, the Court of Owls has sentenced you to die and you will be left here in this maze as a testament for blah, 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 blah. And as Talon is essentially beating the ever-loving crap out of Batman and he's finally just on his last legs, he holds Batman up and presents him to the Court of Owls to say, all right, how do you want me to kill him? And we see all of these just really grotesque-looking people. At least that's how Batman sees them. Just saying like, ooh, break his neck, bleed him out, blah, blah, blah. And then we see one of the people suggests that the child decide, because there's just this little girl there for some reason. And the little girl just says, hurt him more. So the Talon just keeps beating on Batman through and through. And eventually the Court of Owls themselves literally all descend on Batman. And they start, prying and pecking at him, as owls tend to do. And Batman looks over and he sees the photo of Alan Wayne. And he's like, okay, well, I don't want to end up looking like him, just begging for help. So time to get this over with. And he just explodes off all these guys. And you see this scale where it looks like Batman himself is this monster compared to all the rest of them. And Talon's like, well, all right, you still got some fight in you. And he keeps on trying to fight with Batman. And Talon keeps on saying things like, owls and bats. And Batman just interrupts and he's like, all I know is that I am sick to death of owls. And he goes and he starts really laying it on to Talon and really landing some good hits. And he forces Talon through a wall into the room with the scale model of Gotham. And he's like, this isn't the city. You don't lord over the city. You're just a hired goon. No matter what they tell you, no matter what you tell yourself, you're just a hired thug. And I'm going to beat the crap out of you. And he kicks him through another wall, essentially knocking him out. And then Batman calls up to the Court of Owls, and he's like, okay, here's the thing. I know this city, and every time I went to that fountain, despite the fact I know it was drugged, I could taste these certain minerals that I also know only apply in this specific part of this river in Gotham, so we must be underneath that. And he also points out how the floor is of a different or of a different consistency than the walls and are easier to bomb their way through. So because of all of his knowledge of rivers and caves and stuff like that, and he takes the photosensitive plate from that camera, he manages to makeshift the tiny little explosion that can get through the floor of the main room down into a cave system underneath where this river runs. And he calls up and he's like, and I will be back for you, Court of Owls, mark my words, as he goes down into this river. And as soon as he gets down there, he's like, I am never going back. Oh, I just need to focus on living for right now. And he swims his way down the river, and as he gets to a certain point down, he sees that there is either glass or ice or something that's blocking the top of like the river surface, and he doesn't have enough strength to break his way through, so he just starts falling down into the deeper depths. And then we see this very elderly Court of Owls lady who I guess is in charge, and they're just asking, all right, what should we do with this talon? And he's like, throw him away. He's like, well, we don't have to throw him away. Kind of our whole thing is that we can reuse him. He'll heal. And she's like, no, he's been traumatized. He's not going to be the same fighter he was pre-Batman. Don't worry, we have plenty more. And they go into the room with like all the coffins and the pictures. And she says, all right, time to wake up all these talons. And that's where we leave off on the issue. Like I said, short issue, but it achieved what it needed to do. The entire first 3-4 pages were Batman genuinely like, nah, I'm done. I die here. This is it. Like he's pretty much given up. But then he gets that second wind as soon as he sees his great-grandfather's face, I believe. So, no, it's a very well-written issue. It just goes by quickly. Art-wise, again, pretty good. There are a couple issues I have in terms of it's still a bit like he throws this talon through a wall and then they're just back into he throws him through a wall into a dark area, but then where the talon lands is just in the central hall area. A couple little inconsistencies here or there, but in terms of what is actually in Batman's mind, his sleep-deprived and barely alive mind, compared to reality, I'm willing to give that a pass. So, overall, it's not the biggest issue, especially because I opened the saying it's kind of the climax, but it's just the climax to that maze thing. It's the climax to him losing his mind. I feel like all the talents being up is definitely the big climax. So, overall, it's like a 7. The art, again, hasn't faltered. It's very well done throughout. Not as stylistic as it was in the last issue, but it's still pretty good. Cover, overall, love that. Just had to bring that up. That used to be my phone wallpaper for a while. But, it's a 7. And we got one more issue left in this trade, but it's definitely feeling like a big bang for the Court of Owls as a concept overall. They're really doing good things with them. So I'm interested to see where it goes from here, and we will pick up on that next month. Birds of Prey number 6, written by Duane Swierczynski, art by Javier Piña. We left off last issue with Starling being misdirected from a group meeting because of probably some memory stuff, and she was shot at and dived over a bridge and then thought that Black Canary may have betrayed her. This issue doesn't deal with that, literally at all. I am so confused by this issue because I genuinely thought I missed something. This is just completely separate. So we pick up with a guy named Brendan Bowman, who he's feeling great. He's got a good mood, and he's super happy. He's going to the coffee shop. He sees a blonde who's checking him out, and he's like, oh, maybe I can leave my number or whatever. And as he reaches for his phone, he sees that it has been stolen, and we see that Starling is the one who stole it. She runs out the coffee shop, and Brendan gives chase. Finally, they confront her, and we see that the blonde who was sitting there at the counter checking him out was actually Black Canary. And so he's cornered, and he's freaking out. She's like, oh no, is there some all-female mugging ring going on? Where's Batman when you need him? So immediately Black Canary and Starling are like, hey, take it easy. We'll explain on the way. But Brendan just sprints out of there. He's not willing to go with them, and he runs back to his office where he was previously working. Black Canary calls Katana, says that she's up, which again, I don't, is she? But as he goes back to his computer, he's like, he knows he should call the police, but apparently he's addicted to what I can only assume is their version of Twitter. And so he posts a tweet saying like, guys, this crazy thing happened, whatever. But then as he's on it, he starts getting a message from somebody who is doing the nursery rhyme thing, aka to trigger him the same way everyone else has. And then we see 40 minutes later, they're in a tunnel underneath Gotham. He's down in his underwear, and Katana's about to stab him with a syringe. He comes to, he freaks out, knocks the syringe out of her hand. And then Poison Ivy comes up to help restrain him. And as she is doing so, Batgirl enters the scene. And he's like, oh, thank God, Batgirl. He's Poison Ivy, I know, is a terrorist. Katana was going to stab me with a syringe. You got to help me. And Batgirl's like, oh, don't worry, Mr. Hill. Take the syringe. And she hits him with the syringe. Now, mind you, his name at the beginning was Brendan Bowman, but they just called him Mr. Hill. They don't reference the fact that his last name changed here ever again. Supposedly, according to the DC fan wiki, this is like, it was all part of his mental thing of them messing with his memory of changing his entire last name. But to me, that seems like that doesn't make any goddamn sense, because the whole point is that they're just trying to change people like into these sort of sleeper agents. Like, what would be the point in changing his last name to Bowman? Like, wouldn't that make it harder because you'd have to come up with a whole fake identity? I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking too much about it, but it really threw me for a loop there because they made sure to give his first and last name and then forgot it by this page. Regardless, he wakes up sometime later and everyone's in costume. Black Canary's there. And basically they just give him the rundown of, hey, here's everything that's happening. We've managed to track down all these people who are working for Choke, and you guys are called cleaners, and you actually were the one who like kissed me back at the first issue in order to prime me to be a bomb. So consider us even, that I'm saving your life now, or whatever it is. And apparently the whole way that it works is that in order for the trade-off for the drug to be, like, I guess, fair, despite the fact that I don't think they're aware of it, period, it gives, like, heightened senses, and they feel great. They always have up endorphins or whatever. But they were all chosen because they're people who are always primed to, like, answer their cell phone or check their email, or, like, they can always be primed to turn into a sleeper agent whenever they're needed. And then they go to the place where the armor is kept, they put it on, and then they go out and do whatever Choke needs them to do. And Brandon is confused, and he doesn't think it's possible, but once they explain some more, he's like, well, let me help. I want to help as much as I can. And Black Canary is like, no, you're too much of a liability. You could literally explode. And Starling's just chimes in like, he's diffused now. We put the fixie drugs in him, so maybe we should use him as like bait or something. And then Black Canary go with Starling, and we just covered that cliffhanger at the end of the last issue of Black Canary, or how Black Canary, like, did she betray Starling? Why did Starling go to a different location despite the fact it was written on her arm? And, like, we don't even get an explanation. It's just, me, mad, just because this sick ticket messed with my memories enough to lead me straight into a trap set by private mercenaries, all of whom are being offered buku, I don't even know that word, bucks to kill me on sight, no questions asked. And then we just see she got away. Like, whatever. And she figured out it wasn't Black Canary, I guess, and we just skipped over that whole, like, seriously, this was an entire issue just gone. So anyway, they say, all right, we'll use you, Brandon. You're going to be our bait. So they send him back into the office, and they tell him what to do. And just offhandedly, the doctor's there. What's his name? Trevor, I think. Yeah, Trevor Cahill. He's just there for some reason, keeping an eye on him through an iPad or whatever. And as he's sitting there trying to just act natural, wait for the next time he's called, all of his coworkers around start spouting off nursery rhymes, so they all are under Choke's control. So then Black Canary comes in, Poison Ivy's there, Katana's there, the whole gang's there, just knocking them out so that they don't kill Brandon, because he's now found out, I suppose. And all of them in, like, synchronous or whatever just say, like, oh, how much do you know about your team, Black Canary? And then we just get a single panel of, like, the primed fight scene, and then Black Canary says, to answer your question, I trust my team completely because we just caught you. So clearly she is confident of whatever just happened. I genuinely don't know what just happened. Like, I get what this issue is by itself, but, like, this just feels like we skipped, like, 3 issues somewhere in there. And somehow, in the same issue, he changed last names for no reason. I'm still confused by that bit. I don't get it. Okay, so all of that is really, really, really frustrating to me. The art is fine. It's nothing great. Javier Piña, I don't think, did any other issues so far, but it keeps in the same style. Like, it perfectly blends. But, like, again, what was this? Why did this? I don't understand what just happened. And this isn't a thing of, oh, they have memory loss or something. No, this is, like, we explained what happened, and I still don't get what happened. So, overall, I'm going to go ahead and give this one a 4. And it's all because, like, this is beyond just, oh, memory loss. This is just bad writing at this point. And I genuinely, I'm not even sure where we're at right now. Like, and then, why is Batgirl on there? I don't know. The more I talk, the more I find issues with it. And I'm fine with not showing the reader everything. But in a story that is so focused on, like, memory and blackouts and stuff like that, you need to at least give the reader enough to follow along. Like, it's like if you didn't see the entire, like, the black and white half of Memento. Like, yes, you would get the story, but then as soon as we got to the middle bit, you'd be like, what, that's it? It's just frustrating. I don't know. But yeah, I'm giving it a 4. I hope it gets better in this last issue of the arc, but I'm not sure right now. Catwoman, number 6, written by Judd, Winick, art by Guillem, March. We left off last issue with Catwoman finding out that all the money she stole was from the cops in Gotham, and so she was arrested by like 150 police officers. This issue picks up basically showing, okay, she was brought in, she's in an interrogation room, and that her records and her fingerprints and like everything are gone. Like, they did a search on her, and she's not giving up her name, but nobody can find anything on her from any source. So she is a verifiable Jane Doe. And Catwoman has no idea why that's happening, but she's counting her lucky stars right now. So they come in and they say, like, all right, where's the money? And she's like, well, here's the thing. It's hidden somewhere, and if you kill me, you're never going to find it. So I think that we need to work together here in order to get to a little agreement. And the cops are like, all right, welcome to the hard way. And they leave the room, and then who walks in but Reach, the superpowered lady from like 2 issues ago. And she walks in, and she is just pissed at Catwoman right off the bat, just throwing punches. We get that one detective who's like interested in, who is it? Detective Alvarez, the one who's interested in Catwoman. Like, oh, this crime thing may be all one person, blah, blah, blah. And apparently he's told the story that Catwoman just escaped. Like, there were 14 cars on her. They surrounded her, and she somehow escaped. And the person who does the booking was just like, hey, they just said they lost her. I don't know. What do you want? But he looks around and realizes that Esther Mulrooney and Davis, a.k.a. the corrupt cops that he knew from the previous issue, aren't around. And he's like, okay, she's in the precinct somewhere. They brought her in, and they're just keeping her in, like, off the books for a while so they can do some extra interrogation. So he needs to find her ASAP to just save her because he's a good cop. So Reach is immediately just going through all the reasons that she hates Catwoman. It's like, oh, we could have been a team. We could have worked together. You had options. You got pissy at me. Now I'm going to beat the ever-loving crap out of you. She's like, do you think I like working for cops? So Catwoman, as she's down on the ground, completely beaten and bloodied, she just starts whispering something. And Reach is like, I'm sorry, what was that? You finally want to talk? And she whispers something again. And Reach gets nice and close, and she's like, speak up. I know you probably have some cracked ribs, but you got to speak up. And then we see that Catwoman went full-on Mike Tyson and rips off Reach's ear with her teeth. So, yeah, that was a thing. So then she flips the handcuffs to be in front of her, throws a few good punches as best she can. Reach is not playing around anymore. She's like, all right, they wanted it out of you, but I'm just going to kill you. So she does one of the little reach power things around Catwoman's throat and just holds her up against the wall until she chokes out. But in that moment, just beforehand, Alvarez comes in, uses a nightclub to knock out Reach, and then Catwoman's like, "Who the hell are you?" And he's like, "I'm an idiot. You gotta go now." And she's like, "All right." So she hops on her bike, drives away, and is just like, "I'm not gonna look a gift horse in the mouth there," but that is very weird. So she goes, she gets the money, and she starts hopping across rooftops, but then she is immediately stopped by Batman, who's like, "Put down the money and surrender. You have caused enough trouble." And she's like, "Oh, this is money. This is my laundry." He's like, "Put it down. I'm not playing games." And she basically just tells him, like, "Look, I've gone through way too much to have this money. Like, if you knew even half of it, you would agree. I'm leaving with this money." And Batman puts his arms on her shoulders, and then straight up fight scene. They just start fighting at each other. And Catwoman's just pissed in general. But as we see the fight continue on, Batman's also getting really pissed as well. At one point, the Catwoman's whip goes around Batman's neck. He cuts it with a batarang, but then he just, again, grabs Catwoman and just shouts at her, like, "Enough, this is over. Why do you keep doing this stuff? Like, what do you think I'm just going to let you keep doing this?" And Catwoman's like, "Yeah, if I keep having sex with you, I'm sure you're going to let me." And he's like, "This is not a game. You have put so many lives in danger. You put your own life in danger. Is that what you want?" And she's like, "Yeah, maybe it is. Maybe I do just want to die." And at that point, Batman backs off for a second. Catwoman leaves the money, but she just runs through the city. She's crying. And she doesn't have anywhere else to go, so that one friend who was the fence that she definitely swore she would never get involved with again, she goes into her apartment, Gwen Altamont, and says, "Hey, yeah, it's me. I'm Catwoman. Can I get your help?" And that's where we leave off for the trade as a whole and the issue. I liked it. I think this is by far one of the less eventful issues, just because everything else has done something big and bombastic, and this is kind of just all right, whatever. It's more of an emotional thing at the end, but even then, it just, I don't know, it didn't feel particularly earned. Because there was nothing that... I mean, Catwoman's put herself in dangerous situations before, but it's never been, at least from an internal sense, from a place of wanting to die, like having a death wish. It's always been more of a, oh, just try to live the best life you can now because you don't know when it's going to end. So I guess those could be interchangeable, but I don't know. Writing-wise, it's fine. It's not great. The smaller beats aren't as good as the overarching. The interpersonal, just people talking, just all Reach is saying at the very end of the fight is just shut up, shut up, shut up, just shut up and die. I get that, but at the same point, I don't know. I feel like these panels would work even better if it was just silent, but that's just my personal opinion. Overall, though, like I said, I do enjoy this issue. I'm going to go ahead and give this one a 6.5. It's definitely up there in terms of they could go a lot of places with Catwoman just acknowledging that maybe she has a death wish. That's a good character beat, but I'm not sure how much they're really going to do with it because that whole thing with her friend dying a couple issues ago also kind of just didn't go too far. It just went one or two issues later, so we'll see where they take it. But overall, I am liking Catwoman in the general sense. I think the art's actually fine. I know Guillem art is hit or miss with a lot of people, but I actually really like this style for this particular book. Yeah, no, it's fine. It's a fine book. I am enjoying it more so than many other books that I'm reading. So I am looking forward to seeing what the next arc brings in the next trade. Nightwing number 6, written by Kyle Higgins, art by Eddy Barrows and Geraldo Borges. We left off last issue with pretty much a one-shot of a demon down in Louisiana, and Nightwing had to go rescue his circus buddy. But the big reveal at the end was that Psycho, the killer, is actually Raymond, the dead friend of his from his youth. This issue picks up. Nightwing is in Austin, Texas, and basically he's just fighting some other super villain with mild powers. It's apparently a dude in an exosuit named Shocks, who I guess is working with some sort of crime network in the city. because there's a man named Terrence Clark who works with contract killers. I don't know. Honestly, it leads to nothing, but the whole thing is that he's fighting this guy, throwing out quips left and right, and he gets shocks in this giant biomechanical armor to go through a glass floor that is just a huge aquarium. So he's able to go after the contract killing booking guy and ask about Psycho and be like, hey, do you know this guy? Because I'm going to drop you off this building if you don't. And he's like, I did a job with him once, but he's taking some time off for something personal, he said. I got his number, but I'm sure it's disconnected by now. And Nightwing's like, all right, cool, didn't expect that to work. So he pulls him back up, gets the number, and hopes that he can use it as a springboard to something. Then we see Raymond talking with, why am I blinking on her name? The girl, whatever her name is. We'll get there. Raya. Anyway, he's talking to Raya, and he's like, all right, so you know what the plan is? And she's like, yeah, are you sure we're really going through with this? And he's like, yeah, of course we are. This is the whole reason we lured him back. He doesn't care about you. He's just as responsible for what happened as anyone else. So let's kill Dick Grayson. So then we see Raya walking with Dick over some scenic bridges or whatever, and she's a little bit out of things, but apparently she's thinking about, according to her, Dick's family and like how it happened and all that stuff, and how she saw them as family back then, and apparently the anniversary of their death is coming up, so they're going to stop the rest of the circus tour, go back to Gotham City, and do a big blowout, like a tribute to the Flying Graysons. And Dick immediately recognizes it, like, oh, this is why Psycho hasn't attacked me again. He was waiting for something big, and this is something big. So I don't think we can really do this show. And so we see him saying that to everyone else in the tent, and they're all just like, are you kidding me? You don't want to do this show? And he's like, well, I mean, we don't know who killed Mr. Haley, so maybe we shouldn't. Like, he has no good reason to throw out there, so everyone's just like, dude, we're doing this show. This is a big event. It's a big ticket thing. We've already pretty much pre-sold tickets to this thing in Gotham. We're doing this. Stop wanting this circus to die. We get a one-page thing real quick of a detective coming across some really bloodied and mangled bodies, and he finds one of Nightwing's Eskrima sticks, like his bow staff or whatever. It has his logo on it. I think that's just set up for the next arc because it doesn't come up here, but we'll see. So we see, I guess the entire thing has gone ahead, and it's got a big old poster out in front of the building. It's the Flying Graysons tribute show, and basically he's going around this giant tent, and he's trying to find as many security points as he can. Like, he's trying to lock it down so he knows where and when Psycho is going to show up. But for that big of a thing, it's pretty much a nightmare to do. And as he's staring up at the poster of his parents, who shows up but Alfred? And Alfred's like, oh, Master Dick, I just wanted to come say hi. I can't stay because over in Batman's book, he's been missing for like a week. So, yeah, I have to go out and be the guy at the back computer, I guess. So, you should enjoy tonight. Like, I know that you are worried about the security, but this is something for your parents, and it could be something good for you too. Just don't be so preoccupied that you don't enjoy it yourself. And the big night comes. It's a loaded house. Dick's keeping an eye on his phone, but then he's shoved out to give a speech about how the circus was his family, and despite the fact that he lost his parents here, he never truly lost his family here in the circus. And he goes back in, and Raya's like, wait a minute, did you mean that? Are we really, truly family? And he's like, yeah, of course I meant that, whatever. But he checks his phone. He's like, ah, crap, Psycho's here. So he gets geared up. He goes up to the place where the sensor caught Psycho, and they start fighting. Psycho immediately unmasks himself, and he's like, here I am. It's me, Raymond. Bet you didn't see that coming. And, you know, keep fighting for a little bit, but then as soon as Dick Grayson is shoved decently far away from Raymond, he pulls out a detonator, presses the button, and the entire floor, like the entire, I want to say just the ring, but it looks like the entirety of the floor of the circus just explodes with Dick Grayson dangling above it. And he's like, oh no. And that's where we leave off. I liked it. It was a solid issue, but it also was just something like we didn't get any huge reveals here. Like, we knew that thing about Psycho and Raymond going into this. We knew everything that was going on in terms of like the plan, more or less, because it's pretty obvious in terms of, okay, here's Raya's in love with Raymond, and Raymond blames Dick, so clearly he thinks Dick is. The only thing that's a bit unclear is, why does Dick seem like the fiercest killer to Raymond? That part's not so clear yet, but nothing in this was a huge surprise, the cliffhanger notwithstanding. This was more, I feel like, for the Alfred talk, where they were just trying to boil down over the course of the issue of like, who does Dick truly see as his family, and who does Raya see as her family, and who does Raymond see as his family? Like, I feel like that was the point of the issue, and in that case it did it well. But in terms of actually furthering the story, I mean, we got the entire concept of this tribute show, the execution of this tribute show, and the destruction of this tribute show all in one issue. So in that regard, you could say it moved by very quickly, but that just makes it feel like more of a one-shot than it does part of the larger story, if that makes any sense. So overall, though, did like it. I'm going to go ahead and give it a 6.5. I think Alfred stuff, and again, how they tie it into the other books with Batman being missing, very well done. I have a couple qualms about some of the ways that Dick looks across this book. It's a little bit inconsistent at times, but I mean, I can get over it. It's not the worst thing. It's not like anything is too off-model. So yeah, 6.5 for this. I think we got one more issue in this arc, and we will see how they wrap it up next time. Red Hood and the Outlaws number 6, written by Scott Lobdell and Joshua Williamson, art by Kenneth Rocafort. Left off last issue on, it genuinely doesn't matter, because this is a prequel issue. Goes back to before any of the stuff that we just saw. So we open with Red Hood. He's struggling to get out of a submarine with some dude with a mechanical jaw up on his legs, and we just see him shoot the guy in the face. He falls down the ground, and then Jason escapes from this nuclear submarine just before it explodes. It's a whole big thing. And we get Jason's talking about, like, oh, here's, you guys should have thought twice before you went up against the Red Hood, and whatever. So the explosion from the nuke does actually, concuss him, knock him out. And we see this tiny little island that he wakes up on. He's confused. He's hooked up to a bunch of medical gear or something like that. And we see a hand inside the screen to fix it as he dozes back off. After a few more days of sleep, we see Starfire come to the screen, and she's like, you seem really familiar, but I can't place it. And she has a memory of her and what seems to be Jason in bed, but I feel like it's supposed to be Dick because of later parts of the issue. But she's like, you seem really familiar. And as she strokes his hair, he pulls out a gun, and he's like, all right, who are you, where am I? Okay, I'm still woozy. Woo. And as he's holding the gun to her, it starts melting just because of the heat coming off her. So he passes out again. That night, he dreams about time he was on a rooftop with Dick Grayson as Nightwing, him as Robin. And basically, Nightwing's just telling him, like, hey, you can't just fly off the handle. I know your instincts are good, but, like, patience is a virtue. And he's like, psh, you're not my real dad. And he just jumps off anyway. And Grayson's like, dude, this isn't a competition. Whatever. So we see again a few more days later. Jason finally gets up, starts walking naked through the woods, or jungles, I should say. And he comes across this giant alien ship that Stark fires at, and she introduces herself, says how she's Princess Coriander from Tamarand. And Jason immediately can't shut up. He's like, oh, hey, you're an alien. That's cool. There's big ship. How come nobody knows about it? Cloaking device? What's the power source? If it's self-adapting? And Starfire's like, all right, how about you shut up a little bit? And he's like, right, no, cool. I can do that. Yep. So she directs him to a closet, and inside we see is a costume that Nightwing was wearing in the flashback. And immediately Jason flashes back to him fighting against Batman, and him having him to the ground, gun against his head, being like, you should have killed the Joker, or this is for letting the Joker kill me, or whatever my motivation is this scene. But then Nightwing comes in, kicks him in the back of the head, and Jason's like, I don't know who you are or how you got Nightwing's gear, but this is some sick game to you. And Corey's like, hey, I don't know how these clothes got here either. There's like this spark of a memory in my head, and it makes me feel good when I think about it, but I can't place it to anything. And she can't remember his name, but she just has this vague memory of being with somebody who she enjoyed being with. So I don't know if he puts on the clothes. I don't think he does, but he's wearing something. And basically he just dwells on all of the like guns in this ship, and he starts like mapping it out and getting a feel for it. And he's like, okay, I know that my teachings from the all cast says I shouldn't be doing this, but I'm really filled with a lot of hate, and I really want to use these guns. But then we see him and Corey out on the beach in the moonlight, and he's like, all right, Corey, I got to talk to you. And she kisses him. And he's like, what the hell is that about? And he's like, oh, I'm sorry. That's how we spread language and understand each other. Sorry, continue with your talk. And Jason's like, okay, yeah, sure, thanks. So they talk, and Jason explains everything about how he's Red Hood and Nightwing and Batman and blah, blah, blah. And then leads all the way up to now. And basically, he's like, are you mad at me? And she's like, why would I be mad at you? You've done literally nothing wrong here. And she basically goes over how the people of the planet are afraid of her because she's basically a walking nuclear bomb, or at least a nuclear source. So she tells him not to hold on to this rage inside of her and whatever. And they embrace, and he says, this isn't really a romantic thing, but like it is a very, very strong friendship that I guess, like, what's really the difference between the two? And it's a few days later when finally Jason is looking online, and he sees that an American is going to be put to death in Karak. And of course, as we picked up in the first issue, it was Arsenal. And so Jason's like, all right, we got to go save him. Let's go for a road trip. And that's where we leave off. It's fine. It's okay. Like, I don't feel like we were at a particularly good stopping point in terms of, like, what was going on in Red Hood. Like, they were running from this town. Admittedly, he had just defeated one of the, whatever they were called, and he was saying what his mission was, that he was going to defeat them all. So I guess that's a stopping point where you could put in a prequel issue, but at the same point, I don't feel like this prequel issue was really necessary. I feel like this would have been a lot better if you had slotted it in as a, like, modern day issue that had flashbacks, if that makes sense. Of you are having him and Starfire talking in the present, and then we're flashing back to when they first met. Again, you can write it however you want. I'm not a professional writer, and that's just how Scott Lobdell and Joshua Williamson chose to do it. But I don't feel like it being a prequel issue just slotted in the middle of this book really feels right, you know? I think that it probably would have been better to keep the continuous story going, but that's just me. Art-wise, it's beautiful. It's Kenneth Rocafort. I can't complain in any regard. My only real complaint is that there isn't enough visual differentiation between Jason and Dick when they don't have their costumes on, but, I mean, that's just constant. No artist really has a good grasp on that yet, so, yeah, no, overall, I give it like a 5.5, and it's mainly just due to the fact that it feels so out of place to just stop the story that we've been doing, like, completely. Like, there have been a couple little tangents that felt like we were stopping, but it was always for the purpose of the all cast being dead. This is just full stop, okay, you need to know how Red Hood and Starfire met. And I'm like, do we, though? Like, really? So, 5.5. The art carries most of that. So yeah, I don't know. I don't even know what to say, like, look forward to next issue for, because this doesn't leave any place it can really move forward into. It's just going to be a fresh start of wherever they happen to be at. So yeah, we'll see. But this one is a little bit for me. Supergirl number 6, written by Michael Green and Mike Johnson, art by Mahmud Asrar. We left off last issue with Supergirl meeting a Kryptonian creation called a World Killer, and they fight. Supergirl loses, and she's trapped on this city of Argo that's orbiting and falling into a big blue star, so she doesn't have a lot of power either. And the World Killer's going to Earth, because of course it is. This issue picks up with a flashback to the later days of Supergirl's training for her trials, and she's fighting against this robotic guy who's basically like, yeah, everyone knows about, like, the parts of the trial about, like, courage or whatever, or smarts, but everyone always forgets that the physical part is still very important. So she's trying to fight against this robot, and the robot is sweeping at her legs and just like, you're disappointing me here. You got to do better than that. And Supergirl's father shows up and was just like, all right, Kara, like, there's only one thing you need about combat. All you got to do is get back up. So come with me. We got to go. And the robot's like, excuse me, but she still needs to finish her lesson. He's like, not today. She's a scientist. We're all scientists in this family. And she's never going to be doing any fighting. And she leads her off. But then we see that basically she was like, yeah, I was in danger of not passing my trials, but if you look at me now, as she's pinned against this wall, I definitely failed them. So she tries to pull the sword out of the wall and free herself, or else she'll burn up as this thing falls into the sun, but she genuinely just cannot do it. But she's at least happy that maybe she'll die in the city where her loved ones died, which, when I say happy, I mean she sees the irony of it. So then we go to Earth, New York City. This lady from Ireland, which gets a lot of focus for some reason. I'm assuming she'll be a main character. She is taking a picture of this couple at the Statue of Liberty, and then all of a sudden rain lands and was like, all right, this is a perfect place to start in this big city. Let's start killing people. And she calls over to a police officer, a security guard, and she's like, hey, you look like you're wearing some sort of official clothing. Are you with the government? And he's like, I guess so, technically. And she's like, cool. Call your presidents and your leaders, whatever. Tell them I've come, and they're to send their best fighters, and I will fight them and kill them all. Then we go back to Argo, and Kara's being woken up by, like, two basically force ghosts of her parents, and Kara's immediately just like, okay, so I'm dreaming? And he's like, I don't know, either you're dreaming or it's a memory, whatever it is, but just know that we love you, we're always here for you. You can get this sword out, so let's try extra hard now. And they pull it out of the wall, and Kara's mother's like, now you gotta get out of this city that's literally, like, seconds away from falling into the sun. And she's like, I don't have any power. I was powered by the yellow sun. He's like, you always have the power inside of you. Just believe in yourself. Which doesn't make a lot of sense, but regardless, she gets the power to fly away. And she escapes the city as it's falling into the blue sun. And basically, she's just kind of accepted. Like, there's this whole thing here of, like, my home is gone. I'm awake. This isn't some nightmare. I have to deal with this. So she's accepting that her home planet is gone in some regard. But cut back to Earth, and rain is already just tearing apart. I think it's New York. It's got, like, what seems to be the Arc de Triomphe, though, so I'm a little bit confused there, unless there's some famous arc in New York I'm just unfamiliar with. Regardless, there are now tanks. They're trying to blow her to smithereens. She's just taking them on, full hit to the stomach. She rips one open and yells at the tank driver to, like, don't hide behind your toys. Fight me like a man. And she hears a voice behind her say her name as Supergirl just flies up, punches her in the face, and tells her to shut up. And everyone's like, hey, she's got the Superman S on her. Is she a Superman? And Rain's like, I knew you could save yourself, and I'm glad you've come to seize your destiny, but I'm gonna, like, we can conquer this world together. And Supergirl's like, I'm not here to conquer it. I'm here to save it from you. So they fight, and Rain gets the upper hand, obviously. And she's trying to do the whole villain thing. It's like, we have much in common, Supergirl. We both wonder where we came from, and the secrets are now lost to time, and blah, blah, blah. And Supergirl's, of course, like, I have nothing in common with you. And he's like, all right, well, here's the deal. So I put in a force field around this city, so nobody's going to interrupt our fight, including your cousin. Yes, I know about him. And so we're just going to duke it out here, and whoever's left will be the one who takes the world. And because she's just terrible, Rain decides to cheat. And she's like, you may be the last of the Kryptonians with your cousin, but I'm not the last of the world killers. As she teleports in an emo-looking saber-toothed wolf guy, a lizard with feathers on it, and some electric blue beetle looking thingy. And that's where it ends. And they say more than one of us survived. So, yeah, a lot of world killers that are all about to fight against Supergirl. It's fine. I get the point they were going for. They were going for the point of like, no, Kara, you will always have us and you're stronger than you know, blah, blah, blah. Like, I get the point they were going for, but it just came across as like so schmaltzy. And not in like a way of like, yeah, you did it. Like, oh, she tried to pull out the sword, but she couldn't. But then with the memory of her loved ones, she could. It's like, oh, she tried to fly away from the planet, but she couldn't. But then with her mother sharing her love, she did. It's like, all right, this is... You set up clear rules about how these things work, and then you're just like, okay, but like the power of love? Fine, I guess. I'm docking a little bit for that, but it's just a tiny bit. I still like the issue. I still think it's a decent enough read. I'm not sure how big I am on there being other world killers, not because I feel like it's going to make Supergirl seem OP, because whatever. My biggest concern is the fact that like she doesn't know who she is, but like they all survived this thing. They all have each other, so shouldn't they be able to like piece some stuff together? And if they are all confused as to their origins, then like they still have an identity within each other. I don't know. It seems a bit weird to me. Overall, though, I'm going to give this issue a 6.5. I do like the art. I'm wondering what this Irish girl is going to be because they really focused on giving her an actual design. So I think she might be Supergirl's best buddy coming out of this, but we'll see. So yeah, no, it's a 6.5 for this. I think we've got like one more issue left in the arc, and I'm interested to see how they end it. Of course, she's going to beat Rain, but the question is, are they really going to have her beat 4 world killers all in one issue? It might be a little much, but hey, we'll see how it goes when we get there next month. Green Lantern Corps number 6, written by Peter J. Tomasi, art by Fernando Pasarin. We left off last issue with Guy Gardner getting together his team, going out to get some guns because guns are the only thing that can overcome willpower, and he's going to rescue John Stewart, who's being tortured. As issue picks up, they're just flying to the planet, making some plans on like, okay, we'll land here so that way people won't find us and blah, blah, blah. There's some banter between the old guard and the new guard in terms of like, oh, come on, wake up, guys. And he's like, oh, we're always awake for danger or whatever. And as they land the ship and jump out, they got all their guns, and guys are screaming, lock and load, everybody. We cut over to John and his little group of 2 other lanterns who are being tortured, and they raise up this platform into the center of this weird... It's the Senate room from the Star Wars movies, but instead of a bunch of senators, it's all of the people of the planet hooked up like Matrix style to be batteries, if that makes sense. And as they're torturing and raising them up, one of the lanterns finally gives, and he's like, enough, I'll tell you everything you want to know. And the keeper's like, all right, cool, sounds great. So John looks around and he's like, wait a minute, who are the people on the walls? And he's like, oh, those are the people of this planet. They're giving their energy in order to keep the planet alive. And then he looks at the people on the immediate platform here, and he's like, well, who are these people that aren't hooked in? And he's like, oh, these are my fathers and my forefathers before them. And he's like, why aren't they hooked in? And he's like, well, in order to serve the people have to serve you. And he's like, dude, you're literally harvesting your people's life force in order to gain like immortality and power. And he's like, yeah, I am. What are you going to do about it? So obviously this dude is super evil, even within a race of bad guys. So as John's chewing him out a little bit more, the keeper leader just backhands him and talks to the lantern who is going to give up, named Kurt. And Kurt's like, all right, John, I'm sorry. I've just had enough. I'm done here. And John's like, no, there's always a way to believe. You can get past this. And he's like, no, I'm not as strong for you. Sorry. And he starts giving up the answer to the key code to get into Oa. And John somehow just breaks free of the restraints. And he's like, sorry, Kurt, can't let you do that. And he snaps Kurt's neck. So that's the thing. It's a full-page spread at that. The ring flies off because, of course, the lantern's dead now, and the keeper leader's like, okay, you maybe bought yourself a few minutes, but I'm going to torture you even harder now. And so at that point, John starts like powering up Super Saiyan style, and he's like, all right, I'm out. And he uses the energy to grab the other guy, Vandor, and they bust out of the whole building. And Vandor's like, dude, how did you, your ring was on empty. How did you do that? And he's like, I funneled in the electricity to like a pilot light for the residual power left in the ring. But we basically got this far as they crash land like right outside the building. But at least they get to pick the place where they die, and they die on their feet, not dangling upside down. But at that moment, of course, with them out in the open, that's where Guy Gardner and everyone else comes up, and they start unloading fire. And it just goes, and it goes, and it goes. They put some like protective suits on John and Vandor so that they won't get hurt in the middle of this. And John tells them, like, hey, you got to go save their people because they are also being enslaved. Like, they're not all bad. It's just kind of like this central group of them that are bad. So go save the people as well. And we just get... I can't even tell what's going on half these pages, if I'm being honest, because it's just a whole bunch of green from the keepers with their weapons and from the lanterns because they're lanterns. It's just green and black on every page. So... basically what they come to the conclusion is that the keepers are fighting until the last man. Like, they're not going to stop no matter what. So they call in the heavy reinforcements, which are the 2 yellow lanterns that we saw last issue. And the one lantern who's flying the interceptor is just like, all right, here we go. And the lanterns are like, oh, good, we get to go eat now? It's like, not exactly. We're going to go ahead and just drop you down and incinerate your entire, like, cell. And then all of your fear energy will explode into one giant fear bomb, which will hopefully take out their willpower. And it's like, oh, all right. Please no. And they're like, it's too bad. So, just some light war crimes and killing prisoners. But regardless, they drop the bomb over top of this fight. Apparently there's an antidote for the fear bomb, which everyone is injected with shortly before they explode. I don't know what that is. I'm guessing tequila. And so this fear bomb incapacitates like everybody, all the keepers, and they're all just like, oh, please don't hurt us, don't shoot us. Oh, John. So their willpower's broken. They're all on their knees begging for mercy. And it's a full day later, 24 hours, and the main guy and his fathers and his forefathers are basically set in the field in front of the lanterns, and they're like, all right, why aren't we going to see the Guardians? Why aren't we placing one of your science cells? And he'd be like, oh, we already talked to the Guardians, and they don't want to put you in the science cells. They've thought of an appropriate punishment for you, specifically you and your fathers and forefathers, not the people, just you. And the punishment is, and they throw down some shovels, and they say that you are going to be digging graves for all of the victims of everyone you've killed. And then we see all of those fish people who died back in like issue 1 or 2, and they're all just on this planet, and it's like, you're going to be digging for the rest of your lives. And that's where we leave off, is that they're doing that. That's their penance. So yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about this as an ending. Like, it's a fine enough story on its own, but like, the fact that the thing that overcame a stronger willpower is just guns, like, I'm not sure what the deeper moral there is, but I'm sure it's not that great of one. So, fine, whatever in that regard. The fight scene was just confusing at best, especially because, like, John specifically points out, like, you have to go save the people who are powering this thing. And then at no point does anyone go and do that. They all just keep staying in the same central fight until they drop the fear bomb, and then like the fear bomb manages to spread to that building as well, so it didn't even matter. I don't know. It seemed a little bit too simple of an ending, I guess. That's what I'm saying. I don't need something to be like super complex and like, oh, how did we ever figure that out? But it's just like, okay, what was the plan? We went in and we shot things. Great. Cool. Thanks. The biggest thing in there was John killing a man with his own hands, and I hope that comes forward in the future issues. I think looking at the cover of the next issue in this trade, it does, like, immediately, so I'm very interested in seeing that. But in terms of if this is the end of the arc for the Keepers, just kind of a little bit of a letdown for me overall. So yeah, I'm going to give this one a 6. Has its problems. The art is fine, save for a little bit of messiness in the battle scenes, but I think that's intentional. I think it's meant to feel like an all-out just slaughter war, like nobody can tell what's going on sort of feeling. Like the Saving Private Ryan beach scene sort of thing, like that level of just chaoticness. So yeah, no, 6 for this. Not the best ending for it, but I guess if that's where they want to go with it, I'm looking forward to see where they go next. Captain Atom number 6, written by J.T. Krul, art by Freddie E. Williams. The second, we left off last issue with Captain Atom fighting against the big slime flesh monster thing and discovering that it has the same sort of energy source as himself, and it absorbs energy much like him. This issue picks up where basically we get a recap of everything that's been going on, of how he's fighting this thing. It has that sense, and how also in the last issue, or actually the issue before, he essentially gave a radiation burn to Renita, his pretty much only friend, and put her in the hospital. So yeah, not a lot of good things going on here, but Captain Atom, as he's facing down this monster, he connects with it on like a mental level, and he sees its entire past of back before he was experimented on for this, like, whatever it was, Captain Atom thing, the quantum field. They experimented on rats, and it seemed like it killed all the rats, but this particular rat survived. It didn't seem like he did, so they just put it in the incinerator and burned it alive, which it very much remembers. And ever since then, it's been just slowly growing and building up into the kaiju we see before us. And so he sees in the mind of it, and he's like, okay, if I can see into your mind, then can you see into my mind? But it doesn't seem like it's cognizant enough to realize whatever it is Captain Atom's trying to get it to realize. At that moment, some planes come in, start firing off missiles, and we see General Eiling is standing over across the ridge, and he's like, all right, keep firing everything you have at it. And one of the pilots is like, Captain Atom's in the way, but are you sure we should be shooting? And he's like, double points if you hit him. So they keep on blasting at it, and Captain Atom's trying to like stop the attacks because it's just going to keep absorbing the energy and making it stronger. But as he tries to talk to one of the pilots by like literally getting up inside of the cockpit, he's like, hey, it just keeps absorbing, stop shooting. And then something goes wrong with the sensors or whatever, and like control is ripped away from the pilots, so both pilots end up ejecting, punching out like right over top of this monster that just starts absorbing their planes into it. And he's like, okay, you guys don't want to land here. So he teleports both of them away over to where Eiling is. And Eiling's like, did you just bring down 2 of my planes? And he's like, look, you need to stop shooting at this thing. It just keeps on absorbing it. Also, please stop shooting at me. And he's like, I'll take it under advisement. He's like, I can probably deal with this, but if you keep feeding it, it's going to get out of control for anybody. And he's like, fine, you have 5 minutes. Deal with it. So he flies over to the monster, and he's philosophically like, it kind of sucks you were a lab rat. Like, they just threw you away. Like, would it have mattered if you were, like, slightly more intelligent? If you were, like, a lab monkey or a rabbit? Like, where do we draw the line in terms of, I got treatment because I was human. I was allowed to live because of that. Why weren't you allowed to live? Regardless, he tries communicating with it, and he tries to like tell it like, look, I'm going to be forced to do this, but I'm trying to tell you to stop. But it can't parse that. It's not getting that. It's too hurt. It can't change its course. So he goes down on the atomic level. He stops letting like the neutrons absorb or something like that. And he just straight up just dissolves it. It just poofs out of existence. Not even so much of like an explosion, just a flash of light, and it's just gone like smoke. And everyone's looking on as he's like, I'm sorry, little guy. And Eiling is like, this may be the weakest Captain Atom is going to be. We can fire right now and possibly take him out. And one of the pilots comes up and was just like, he just saved everyone, and especially me, right out of the air. You cannot truly be talking about firing on him. And Eiling takes a second. He's like, all right, fine, cancel the bombs. So he cancels the nukes. But then he puts the pilots in quarantine because they were just saved by Captain Atom, so who knows what that means. So Atom shows up in Renita's hospital room. Dr. Magala recognizes his presence there. He can feel it. And he's like, you did do this. You did hurt Renita, but you also have the ability to undo it. And he's like, I can't do that. All she did was touch me and I did this. I can't make human skin. And he's like, you can. You turned a plane into a feather. Like, you can do anything. So Magala walks him through the process of, like, all the different things that go into skin and, like, human muscle and stuff like that. How to get all the building blocks together. And one by one, she just recrafts Renita's hand. And she just wakes up, sees it, and just is so happy about it. They talk for a brief second before the other doctor, Scott, comes in and starts yelling about how Captain Atom's in there. But once he sees them embracing, he's like, all right, I can't really be here. So he takes off and he's like, it sucks that I feel like such an outsider, that I feel like I can't be a part of the planet, but at least I matter to the people that I can help. At least I can matter in some way there. And he can take solace in that fact. And we just see pictures of, like, the people he's helped and the people that he's also hurt and just different people that he's affected in his time here. And the whole time in this thing, I don't even know if I've ever brought this up, there's just a timer that's been going on. And it has been going up, it looks like. Because, like, it starts on issue 1 at 250 somethings. And at this point, we're on 297 somethings. So it looks like it's been going up. But then you flip the page. Oh, it's got a background of like a year, I think. I don't know. Regardless. The year is like 6574. And then in 6594, the entire Earth is exploding. No caption boxes, no explanation. Just as 20 years later, big boom, the Earth is gone. So I guess they're going to tie that in. Like, it's literally so jarring because it's just like, I may be alone, but at least I can take comfort in that. So, yeah, we'll see how that turns out. Overall, I like this book. I would highly suggest if you don't know anything about Captain Atom, I think this is a decent place to get into it. It's a much more heady book. It's got a lot of, like, philosophical, just stop and think sort of things. This definitely feels like less of a Captain Atom book in terms of, like, oh, he's a military man, just following orders or whatever, and more of like, hey, what if we wrote a book about Dr. Manhattan, but like in the DC universe, but not the book they wrote about Captain Manhattan in the DC universe. It feels like that, and it's a solid read of just philosophical, like, how does God view people when he walks among them? I think that's the best way to really describe this book. And the art is fantastic throughout. I really do love Freddie Williams' art. So, yeah, no, overall, I'm giving this one a 7. Just because, in particularly, this wasn't one of the best issues on its own. But for capping off the arc, I think it did a fantastic job overall. And I am very much looking forward to seeing where we go with the next arc. DC Universe Presents number 6, written by Dan DiDio and Jerry Ordway, art by Jerry Ordway, a.k.a. the first part of the Challengers of the Unknown section of this book. Basically, we just leave off on a, hey, what are we even doing here? What even is this? And apparently, according to this, like, Daily Planet half-article thing going on, there's a reality show that's basically like Survivor called Challengers, where they go to these extreme places and they just do stuff. And this season it's taking place in the Himalayas. But apparently last season was sagging in the ratings, and so this season has like D-list talent that nobody's ever heard of, a.k.a. they're unknowns. Wink, wink. But yeah, we see the producer is June Robbins. She's up in the cockpit of this plane that's flying through this blizzard. And things are a little bit shaky, but they're doing all right. her boyfriend or husband or something like that is named Ace. He's up in the cockpit along with a co-pilot. Again, there's like 7 characters all introduced rapid fire here. I don't quite have all their names recognized yet, but I will get there. I'll say the ones that like I can remember. So she goes back and she checks on all the talent in the back of the plane. We get a girl named Brenda who's just kind of like a Twitter star, I guess. Like, I don't know how best to describe her. I don't think she's done anything. She just gets in front of she just looks pretty. We get like this perverted guy who is a redhead. I don't think they even give his name yet. And we get this other guy named Rocky. And there's one guy named Kawa who has a camera and he's just recording for his 4 million followers on Flutter. So whatever. Anyway, she goes up and she talks to a guy who I guess is like a consultant or something for the series. His name is Clay. And she's like, hey, are you sure we should come to the Himalayas? Like, this doesn't feel right. And he's like, no, this is definitely the right place and the right time. I have this feeling. And so Kawa is like poking his camera where it doesn't belong. And someone suggests, hey, how about you go up into the cockpit and join them in there instead of bothering us? So Kawa goes up. He tries talking to the pilots, but the light on the camera like blinds them. So he goes and turns it off. But as soon as he does, this giant face appears in the cockpit window. And then it disappears, and they're like about to crash into a mountain. And so everyone like, oh, get your seatbelts, everyone, what's going on? And then just boom, giant crash in the mountain. June starts waking up, and she sees Ace standing over her, but he's missing like half his face, and he looks very demonic, and he's chasing after her with a knife. And she punches him out, and it's just like, oh no, this must be some sort of nightmare. But Ace is just like, oh, can't you see? I'm here for a higher calling. Don't you understand? Everyone was there for a reason except for me. And so he plunges the knife into her chest. Everyone else is tied up on the walls. And as she screams no, she wakes up in like some sort of Asian garb. And a man is standing over saying, oh, hello, hi, you've been through a terrible ordeal. We're caring for your people. But, yeah, no, you're fine. And she's like, oh, I need to find Ace. And he's like, oh, you mean the blonde one? Yeah, no, he's not one of yours, therefore he's not here. He's like, what do you mean he's not one of us? He was clearly in the plane with us. But then she gets a walk and talk with this guy, and apparently this place is Nanda Parbat, a.k.a., I believe they say, the place that is the, like, home of worship for Ramakrishna, I believe. I don't know. Regardless, he tells her that Ace is dead and that she's not, like, he's not coming in. But immediately June sees Clay trying to talk with one of the people there about this talisman with this spiral symbol on it. And apparently he's been called out by this symbol saying, like, oh, it talked to me and it's been guiding me and guiding all of the choices regarding this show. Everyone involved was handpicked because of this little talisman guiding me. And she's like, okay, you're crazy. And everyone else is coming to, and everyone's like, oh, man, like, we're all here for some reason. Like, what's going on? There must be a scientific reason for this, blah, blah, blah. But they're all brought into a hall to basically be talked to by this main guy. And the redhead is just the biggest dick. And I still don't know what his name is. But regardless, he's like, oh, man, this must be like punked. You know, punked. This must all be a prank. And then they're like, oh, I can't believe you fell for this whole ancient Chinese hidden in the Himalayas town thing. But yeah, they're basically just trying to figure out what's going on. But they're drinking and they're talking to each other, just trying to get some answers as to, like, what do they remember, if they remember anything about how they got here. But nobody can seem to recall how they got here. And as they're drinking this wine, they all pass out. You know, the wine has been drugged. They literally flat out say that's what happens. And they wake up next to the plane that is crashing the mountains. They're back in their normal, like, snowsuit gear, which they weren't in before, mind you. And Clay's freaking out. He's like, no, I came so far to ask about this talisman. But everyone else is just like, okay, we need to figure out what we're doing now. This is like the survival thing we were training for anyway. So let's go to the plane. Let's see what we can get supplies-wise out of it. One guy's trying to get like the GPS kicking. Other people are trying to get all like the first aid kits or whatever. But they get all their stuff out and they start prepping for it. Meanwhile, Clay is just like, nope, I'm going to deal with this talisman thing. But as they are checking out the plane, they realize that it feels like it's covered in enough ice that it's been here for weeks instead of like the hours that it feels like to them. So clearly something's going on. But before they have time to think about it, they see a helicopter flying overhead and they realize the search team has found them. So they got to climb up to it and like get to a place where it can land. So they start scaling up this mountain, but the rock slide almost pushes them down. And as they get up to the top and the mountain starts collapsing, it turns out that it actually wasn't a mountain. It was this giant, the best I can describe it is a mix between an axolotl and a sloth made of ice. Take that for what you will, but it has this really long prehensile tongue. And Clay sees that the talisman is glowing again as they approach the helicopter. Helicopter, like, it landed, it's on fire because of something that happened. But like a hole is punched through the windshield and the pilot is unconscious. But Clay sees the talisman is glowing. He turns it around at the beast and it just fires off this huge blast. And it's just like, okay, all right. Does anyone have any idea what's going on anymore? And June is grabbed up by the beast tongue and everyone's pulled up into the helicopter. They're like, all right, maybe we can try to get close to her and see if we can grab her. But then Clay realizes like, no, it wants this amulet. We only have one shot. So Clay jumps out of the plane, lands on the beast's tongue, stabs it with the amulet. It ends up throwing June away so that it can focus on Clay. Clay throws the amulet to June and was just like, protect this thing with your life. For God's sakes, find out what this is all about. And June's like, I'm not leaving you, Clay. But then, Clay's eaten. And the beast just, he's happy to have eaten. And so June's like, all right. So Clay just sacrificed himself to protect the stone. The fate of the world rests in our hands. I don't know where they came from that. I think it was something that one of the Nanda Parbat guys says. But they're like, all right, this plane or this helicopter's kicking, but it doesn't have a lot of gas. We don't have very far. So let's see how far we can get. And they're like, all right, let's make the most of our time. And then there's just one panel at the end of Ace crawling out of what appears to be a well made of skulls. Yep. Sure, whatever. This book was very confusing. Like, for a part one where you're introducing a team that is not, like, Justice League affiliated, like, this is its completely separate thing, I should know exactly what's going on. I frankly don't. I don't know many, if any, of these characters' names. If you know you're getting a certain number of issues, then fine, you can write for that. But it does not feel like a good introduction in the first place. So overall, I got to give this one like a 5. And that's pretty generous if I'm being honest. The only reason I'm being even that high with it is because I do think there are some cool concepts that could be going on here. It's a very broad story it's telling. It's not focused on like, okay, there's a specific villain. Like, we can do a lot with this. So I'm into it for the potential it has. But in terms of what it's actually doing so far, it's confusing, and I'm not sure what the hell is going on. Wonder Woman number 6, written by Brian Azzarello, art by Tony Atkins. We left off last issue with Wonder Woman confronting Poseidon, Lennox confronting Hades, and Wonder Woman telling Poseidon, by the way, Hera is claiming the throne of Zeus that was left behind. And we see Hera that's pissed off about that. This issue picks up still with Wonder Woman dealing with Poseidon's tentacled form. And basically just saying, like, yeah, here's all the reasons why Hera thinks she has the rightful claim. And Poseidon's just like, bullshit, man. That's my rightful claim. I don't want that. We see on the bridge, 2 of those centaur people are attacking Zola. Again, for whatever reason. I think they're sent from Hera, I think. I don't know. Regardless, attacking them, and Wonder Woman doesn't seem to notice at the moment that it's happening, so Zola's left to fend for herself. But we cut over to Lennox, who's talking to Hades, and Hades is actually a lot more just chill, just taking it on, whatever. And basically they're just talking to each other, just saying like, all right, let's make a deal. And we don't get to see the details of the deal, but we do see that Hades is like, all right, you've made an interesting proposal. Are you sure that Poseidon's going to agree? And he's like, yeah, no, totally. He'll definitely agree. And he asks what Lennox wants in return for this deal, pretty much. And Lennox just says that he wants a light because he's just got a cigarette in hand, and Hades has a bunch of candles on his head. Then we cut back to the Wonder Woman Poseidon fight. And Poseidon's like, Are you talking about making a deal with Hades? I am in no such mood to do so. And as he swats Wonder Woman away, she sees that Zola's in trouble. She breaks off a flagpole and just basically does a pole vault into the face of one of them. And then as the other one goes to lift up the truck that Zola is hiding under, you just see this rush of blood pooling underneath the truck. And then Wonder Woman's blood-stained arms, not just hands, full arms, lifting up the truck and saying, like, Zola, didn't I tell you to stay out of the way? Or stay close? And she's like, yeah, okay. Thanks, I guess. So they hop onto Poseidon. And they're like, this is not going according to plan. Hopefully Lennox is having better luck than I am. So cut back to the Lennox conversation with Hades. And Hades is like, why are you like just a mortal man playing with us gods? Because it never ever ends well for the mortals. Like for us, it literally is a game. Nothing has consequences. But for you, it's literally life or death. And as he looks out and at the end of this tunnel and sees Hermes standing there, he's like, wait a minute, hold on. You're working with Hermes? Okay, all right. And he like laughs at that for some reason. But it's not entirely obvious why, but clearly Hades knows something that the rest of the group does not. And when Poseidon shows up, Lennox just says, God Almighty. Both Hades, Hermes, and Poseidon go, yes. And so basically they come together, and Wonder Woman asks if Lennox can be trusted when Wonder Woman's gone for whatever reason. And he's like, yeah, no, totally. I'll take care of what needs to be done. And so Poseidon and Hades talk for a second. But Poseidon apparently hasn't heard the entirety of the deal. He's just here in order to, like, see Hades and, like, tell him flat out to his face that there will be no deal. But Hades tells him, like, hey, no, brother, listen, because there's actually something pretty cool going on here. And Wonder Woman puts forward that the heavens are ruled by day by Poseidon and by night by Hades. So they trade off every 12 hours, and they share Hera as their queen. And Poseidon gets a kick out of this. He loves it because it is priceless against Hera. Hades also gets a little chuckle out of it. But as soon as this deal is like about to be made, Hera crashes down. It's just like, excuse me? No, I am not going to let this happen. If Zeus were here, he would break your bones. And he's like, he's not here, though, and we're going to do as we please. And she's like, look, there's a throne up there that needs an ass on it, and if it's going to be anyone's ass, it's going to be mine. So, and Poseidon's like, oh, really, your ass? Isn't it quite frigid? And Hera's just pissed off about it. But as they're arguing, Lennox takes one of the candles off of Hades' head, throws it over to Diana, who catches it, and also catches Hermes' staff, and uses that to do something. I'm not entirely sure, but she imbues it with some sort of power, throws it at Hera, and there's some sort of magical effect where Hera is taken back to the realm of the gods. And Wonder Woman's standing there in the same room with her, and it's apparently her like scrying pool, the thing that she's been viewing everything through in her main room, has turned to just a mirror, like she can't see into it anymore. And Wonder Woman's like, cool, so now you're going to stay out of our lives and like we're going to deal with this on our own. Okay, cool, bye. And as Hera's about to attack, she teleports out back to the group of the gods. And it's apparent because of just the way that they teleported out and how Hera disappeared, some like rocks collapsed on Lennox, and it's apparently that he's pretty much invulnerable. Like he can just take a whole bunch of rocks landing on him with no problem. And as Wonder Woman re-arrives, Poseidon and Hades are made aware that they basically were just used as tools to get this to happen. Like, the deal was never going to happen. It was all just to get Hera down here so that they could do that thing and get her permanently gone. So Poseidon leaves, and he's just like, all right, lighten up, brother. And Hades is like, no, I don't like being made a fool of. So as Wonder Woman's standing there, just like, all right, I did what I had to do in order to protect Zola. She should be safe now. But as Zola looks back to the cave where Hades walked into, she sees her mother standing there. And so she walks up to it. But then as she gets closer, it turns into some like big old tentacle monster thing that takes Zola deeper into the tunnel. And as Wonder Woman charges in afterwards, Hades is standing there. And it's just like, all right, Wonder Woman, we struck a deal. And I agreed to it. Now you better fulfill your end of the deal, or else the bloodline ends with you. So Zola is still in trouble, but now it's from Hades because he didn't like being played as part of Wonder Woman's game. It's good. It's solid. I don't hate anything it's doing. It's pretty much good for that. I really like this plan, but I wish that there were a bit more like explanations to like what the hell just happened, if that makes any sense. Like, why did one of Hades' head candles make it so Hera can't interfere anymore, or like can't see what's going on? It's all a bit confusing. But in terms of if I just accept that that's a thing that happens, I love everything else about this issue because it's Diana being smart and strong and cunning. She's just a good hero here of doing what's needed to be done in order to save the life of this mother and the child. So I am down for that. It's a solid issue. I just wish there was a little bit more explanation as to like the back end of things. Additionally, this is the end of the trade as well, and I don't feel like this was the best leaving off point. Like, all right, Hera's now been traded in for Hades as a main threat, maybe, but I don't know. The fact that Hades was pretty much just introduced in this issue. Yeah, he was there in the last issue, but only for like 2 panels. I don't know. I would like more build up to that than anything else. But overall, I'm going to give this issue a 7.5, primarily due to Diana's plan being fun. The gods just laughing over the fact that they would be sharing Hera and Hera freaking out over that. And yeah, no, it's just the art is fantastic the whole way through. I really cannot fault it anywhere in there. So overall 7.5. Looking forward to seeing where it goes from here. Blue Beetle number 6, written by Tony Bedard, art by Ig Guara. We left off last issue with Jaime basically banishing Brenda's aunt to the Shadow Realm, and Paco breaking out of the hospital and becoming Red Beetle, I guess? He's hunting down Blue Beetle for whatever reason, probably because he killed him. So this issue opens up, Brenda's come into Jaime's room, and she's just screaming about how Paco's gone. And I just want to point out that Jaime gives a little bit of narration here, being like, I have dreamed of so long for Brenda being in my room, but the 2 things that were different are 1, Brenda's not crying, and 2, I'm not the one who's topless, because he's changing clothes right in the middle of this. It's a cute little moment. Anyway, so he plays dumb. He's like, what, you mean he's dead? And she's like, no, he's missing. Somebody broke into his room and took him. And so Jaime's trying to cover up the Blue Beetle symbol on his back before she can see it. And she's just freaking out because she's also trying to contact her aunt, and her aunt's not answering either. So she has no idea what's going on, and like who the people who were attacking them, like why they were, what did Paco get into. And as she's trying to vent to Jaime is just thinking to himself and also talking to the Beetle, just like, how do I like try to explain myself? Because she knows, she may have seen that like I went with her aunt before. How do we explain where the aunt went? Blah blah blah. And as he's zoning out, Brenda just like freaks out on him because he's not paying attention. And he's like, whoa, I'm just trying to figure out like what's going on. Think this through. Like, okay, are you sure that Paco snuck out and that he wasn't like taken? And she's like, he had open heart surgery. I don't think he would sneak out. I feel like he had to have been taken. And then the doorbell goes off, and she's like, oh man, what if it's them? He's like, I don't think villains ring doorbells, but just stay here. And as he goes to the door, he sees it's Paco. And Paco looks really bad, like sunken in cheeks and eyes. He's not doing good. And his voice is like robotic in some way. It's just saying, you. And he says how the organic host blames you for betraying him. And we see the red Beetle armor going over his body. And based solely off of back matter, I know this guy's name is Thorax, but if I call him that, that's why. So anyway, he turns into his full suit, punches out Jaime, and says how Kajida is relieved of duty. And Brenda hears all the crashing and everything, comes out, and just sees Thorax and Blue Beetle beating up each other. And Blue Beetle's like, where did this guy come from? And the suit's like, I tried to warn you. When you put that thing inside of Paco in order to save his life, it activated some extra hoo-ha security measure, whatever, that basically recognizes that I am not in control of you, and therefore it's trying to eliminate me so that it can complete the mission. So Blue Beetle just trying to stay alive at this moment and also keep Brenda safe. Gives the suit permission to blow him outside but not kill him. Still can't kill him. And he looks over to Brenda. And Brenda's, again, just freaking out. And he doesn't even bother trying to explain himself right now. He's like, all right, that's whatever. I'll deal with that later. So he goes and he fights Paco some more. Apparently his parents just got home at this point. And like they're fighting on the hood of their car. And they're like, oh, we got to get inside and get Jaime out. We got to protect everyone. And so Paco shoots some goo, some slime or something onto Blue Beetle's like buster cannon, and he's unable to get it off and he can't shoot through it, so his primary means of attack is gone. Family runs in trying to get out Jaime. They can't find him anywhere. So they're like, all right, what is Jaime up to? Back to the fight. Red Beetle keeps on throwing punches. The other arm turns into a cannon, which also gets covered in the slime. And it's just he's completely coated. He's completely helpless. And keeps on Thorax keeps yelling about the mission. And Jaime's like, I don't even know what your damn mission is. And so Thorax tells him straight up, infiltrate the target world, disable planetary defenses, prepare the world for conquest. How do you not know this? And so Blue Beetle's like, I mean, I kind of thought that's what it was. I was just hoping not, so I didn't ask. And so the suit relays that the organic host, Paco, thinks that Jaime is pathetic. And so Blue Beetle finally throws a punch against Paco, saying, screw you. And he starts getting angry just because like Paco keeps looking down on him. And he's like, you always treat me like I wasn't good enough, like I was lucky to have you. But you know what? You're a high school dropout. Have fun conquering the world with that. Now who's pathetic? But regardless, as soon as he says that, he's like, you know what? I'm not fighting you anymore. He's like, you surrender your life? He's like, no, I'm surrendering control. So he talks mentally to the suit. He's like, the suit's like, you're surrendering to me? I finally get to control you? And he's like, no, just play along and make your voice sound like mine. So he goes in and he grabs Brenda and he just drags her out into the fight. And he throws her down on the ground and he backhands her. And he says, like, you recognize this girl? You see her? This was someone who meant something to my organic host, but now she's nothing to me. So he opens up the buster cannon and is about to attack her. And he's like, do you need more proof? Or is this enough? And because Paco is inside of the Thorax suit, he also cares for Brenda. The scarab that's surrounding him is like, all right, good enough. He cancels the replacement protocol and turns just back into Paco. And Brenda looks up at Blue Beetle and is just like, who are you? Why did you try attacking Paco? Why won't you just leave us alone? And Blue Beetle, of course, hurt by this. He realizes that all of this, his house being blown up, his family being attacked, is all because of him. So he gets in the Blue Beetle suit and he just flies away. And he's like, we're going somewhere else. And the suit's like, where? And he's like, anywhere else. But I'm not going to hurt my family anymore. So they're just going far away. And that is where the trade ends. I really enjoy this series. I think it did have a few falters in terms of it. It set up some plots that I feel like that whole thing with the Reach being just outside of Earth and then getting a call for the Blue Lanterns. I feel like that was a setup just in case this book was on the chopping block and didn't get past 8 issues. And they were like, okay, if we don't get there, we're going to do the whole Reach trying to invade thing, and then we'll just wrap it all up there. So it's a nice little bow. But because they did get the extra issues, it just kind of feels like they brought it up for the sake of nothing now. Like, we'll eventually get to it at some point down the road. Same thing with the Ant, where I feel like the Ant was kept alive just a little bit longer than she probably should have been, just because, well, we're not going to kill her off earlier if we're just going to get canceled in the end. So we would save that killing her off for the last issue. But now that they're getting more issues, it's like, all right, let's kill her off already so that way we can focus on some other stuff. I just feel like this entire book was early issues structured around the fact of they could be canceled at any minute, and as such it kind of suffered a little bit. But regardless, this particular issue I really do enjoy. I think it did a solid look at like Jaime as a character compared to Paco, because Paco has just been a recurring character throughout this book that's influenced Jaime and how he sees himself throughout the entire thing, of like not quite as strong, not quite as likable, not quite as everything else. So it's a good parallel there to be able to say like, no, he's the Blue Beetle suit and he managed to outsmart Paco. That's where his strength lies, of just being able to outthink the opponent. So overall, I like it. I'm giving it a 7.5. That may be more representative of Blue Beetle as a whole, but I'm going to ascribe it to this particular issue. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing where we go from here in the continuing adventures of Jaime Reyes. Legion of Superheroes number 6, written by Paul Levitz, art by Francis Portela. We left off last issue with, who even knows, man? It was like a weird hourly comic that I don't think really turned into much of anything. Hopefully not, at least. So this issue picks up with a bunch of the heroes. Specifically, there's, I think, Element Lad and Chemical Kid are there, and a couple of others. Sunspot, I guess his name is. I don't know. Regardless, they're on Earth. And there's a sea of fire, apparently, where I believe China was, because they have completely ruined this planet and everything is hell. So, apparently, because of their powers or whatever, they have cities that are still in this fire sea, and they use a catalytic converter to reduce the pollution, get the energy reclaimed, but some eruption of magma or whatever has caused it to go offline. So Chemical Kid needs to use his powers in there in order to restart the engine. So they go in there and he does it. And then that's that. That is literally the end of that story. So then we get, and I had to look this up because, again, none of these are re-given any name tags. We never get a reminder of their names. You just have to go back to issue 1 where like half of them were given. So we have Star Boy, I think, and Dream Girl. And they're just hanging out in the Legion headquarters, coordinating stuff. And they start making out real quick. And then Stargirl's like, all right, but Mon-El and Brainiac 5 are off planet, so I've got to do my work. That's the end of that arc. So then we get Dragonwing, who was one of the new Legionnaires. She tries to get into this person's apartment, and when the door opens up, a dog comes out and say hi for it, and she's looking for someone named Bao, but when she gets in, she sees a sigil for this red dragon, and she freaks out and lets out some fire breath or whatever her power is. The dog pisses inside, they straight up show it. Yeah, Brainiac 5 and Mon-El are both talking to the soldiers on that planet that they were on with the Daxamites, and they were trying to figure out what kind of telepathy forced them to do this sort of stuff. But this one dude shows up and he's like, no, this wasn't telepathy. This was entirely different. They were imprisoned or imprinted on by the Dominators. And so they think about that for a second. They're like, okay, well, why? Like, maybe we shouldn't have let the Dominators go. But regardless, sometimes we choose to do what's futile even when we know better. They kind of just say that line, and it doesn't really make any sense them bringing it up. Regardless, we go to a Dominator planet, I guess, and we get the rules of the Dominators, which basically just all boil down to you are nothing. There are people who are better than you, and you will throw yourself at their feet and hope for mercy if you ever fail. And so the Dominator, who I guess was in charge of that whole attack, shows up and he's like, Primus Dom, I have failed. Our fleet has been damaged. And so this big fat Dominator who's standing over everyone just says, like, you're a disgrace. And he grabs the guy, like, claws his head, and then eats him. That's the end of that. So I'm going to go back to the Dragon Wing thing. And she's walking through the rain, and she talks to someone looking for Bao, which it's her sister. Just straight up, it's her sister. But apparently they were looking to the Blue Tiger for protection. So I guess it's like rival clans of Red Dragon, Blue Tiger, or whatever. But it didn't go through. But then the dog gets the scent of her, I suppose, and starts running through the rain. Dragonwing gives chase. They open up a door, and it's someone who looks pretty closely identical to Dragonwing, but it's like she looks more goth, and she has actual dragon wings, like legitimate dragon wings. And she's like, oh, this stupid dog, I should have killed it instead of leaving it for you. But I guess it's not too late for that. And then we see the dog isn't actually the dog. It's Chameleon lad, boy, kid. And he stops Dragonwing's punch and was just like, because now you're part of the Legion. It's good that you work as a team with your fellow Legionnaires when you're doing stuff like this, Dragonwing. But then we see the Dragonwing has her own group with her inside the Red Dragon den, and they all come out to attack. But then Chameleon Kid turns into this uber huge dragon-sized, like, crazy beast. Dragonwing lets off her own attack. It's just a little bit of a fight scene, just saying like, oh, okay. But then Dragonwing finally gets the upper hand on her sister Bao. And was just like, now, big sister, I have a question for you. And then we just stop. And we go over to a group of people who I guess all exited this building. And someone who says, I am to be the Phoenix Fire of China's rebirth. And he's like, just a dude on fire with a bunch of tattoos. Just interrupts them and says like, oh, perhaps I may assist you. And that's it. That's where the issue ends. Strangely enough, I don't really know like where any of this stuff is coming from, and yet it is still the issue that has made the most sense to me. Like, this is just, it's so confusing for no reason. Like, I understand you feel the need with a whole bunch of characters to jump between them all and see like, what is this group doing? What is that group doing? What is this group doing? I get that. But man, you don't have to. You can just focus on one group for just one arc. Get me to know these characters. You gave me one page over the course of like all past 6 of these issues. You've given me one page in each issue focusing on Starboy and Dreamgirl. And I still had to look up their name before I started because they never, ever say them. This is such poor storytelling, and I know it gets tiring me saying that, but I am tired of reading this. I'm going to give this a 3.5. Primarily, just because this is the first one that has made any sense to me in any regard. Like, I am able to follow the bare bones of this one, but that is not saying a lot. Oh, God, I am so frustrated with this book. I don't even know what I want it to be. I want it to be over. That's what I want it to be. My Greatest Adventure number 5 anthology series. Let's kick it off first with Robot Man, written by Matt Kint, art by Scott Collins. We left off last issue with them arriving on this island of giant beast things. They were attacked by a giant robotic gecko. Maddie seemingly was attacked, but Robot Man was out of commission briefly. This issue picks up basically his backstory some more of like how he became Robot Man. It was the fastest land speed race, but apparently the person who was doing all of the math and stuff like that and figuring out, how everything was going to be safe, they didn't take into account the reaction between the desert salt and the rubber tires and like all the heat causing them to basically become plastic explosives. And the one thing that they kept telling him was that he'd be safe no matter what because of the nanobots. But what they failed to tell him was that the nanobots, in order to react in the 8 seconds that he had in order to save his life, they would have to basically devour his entire body for energy just to save his brain. So it was quite some time later. He had been left out in the desert. They all assumed that he was dead, but it turns out the nanobots formed him into this robotic body. He took off and flew basically out into the atmosphere and then came crashing down on the same island that he's on now. He became a bunch of pieces, and in basically going out into the atmosphere, some of the nanobots got corrupted due to radiation, and so they were purged from the body, but were still left on this island, therefore infecting all of the local fauna. So that is how we came to giant mechanical gecko thing that was attaching them. And so Robot Man comes across the place where he landed, and the gecko's still attacking him, seemingly to crush him into the ground. But he's like, all right, enough screwing around. It's time to go find Mr. Turing, as I was hired to do. But he's got to fight this gecko real quick, so he just blasts through its brain real quick, does a scan trying to find where like the heart of it is, and he moves in, zooms through its stomach, and pulls out just this tiny normal gecko that like all of these machines have built around him. And he's like, all right, well, we'll study you later, but first off, Maddie is on this island, and Maddie, by the way, was the scientist who got the math wrong for his accident, and therefore that's the reason that she's kind of been babysitting this whole time. But Maddie's heartbeat has gone up, so she tracks it down, and he blasts basically into this bunker of Mr. Turing, Dr. Turing. Maddie's in there, and there's a whole bunch of experiments being done. And as it turns out, Dr. Turing is also some level of military general, so it's going to be one hell of a confrontation. Overall, it's fine. It's nothing too fantastic. I give it like a 6, just because we got at least Robot Man's origin, which they've been hinting at over and over again, and why Maddie's around now, so I'm good with that. Next up was Garbage Man, written and art by Aaron Lopresti. We left off last issue with Garbage Man fighting dinosaur things that were supposedly spawned from the mind of this vagrant guy, and he's flat out says, like, look, you got to kill me. It's the only way. I was used in this experiment that they opened up a dimensional doorway whenever I sleep, and it spawns up these monsters, and the only way you can stop it is to kill me. And Garbage Man's like, no, we'll figure out something else to do. But before they can, a whole bunch more of the dinosaurs start attacking. Samantha, the Reverend, all the homeless people are trying to run away and escape, but they seemingly are stopped at every turn. Garbage Man uses a live electrical wire to shock some of the dinosaurs into submission. The Reverend kicks over one of the flaming oil, like, barrels, I guess you want to say, and uses it to allow everyone to escape as Garbage Man is holding his own. And we see the man who is being used as this doorway. He sees the electrical wire and he's like, the door's got to be closed. People are dying. I only exist to hurt others. I'm only good if I'm dead. And we see this face of what I think is the guy who also made Garbage Man, basically saying like, oh, I took you off the streets and I made you into something better, something bigger. You're not going to be killing yourself anytime soon because you're no good to me dead. But he reaches for this wire and basically takes himself out of the game. He kills himself. And all the dinosaurs go back into his head and disappear. So Samantha and Garbage Man are given a second alone, but not after some of the homeless folks thank Garbage Man for saving them. They don't see him as a monster, and the Reverend specifically says, like, I'll go tell everyone it's safe to come back down here because there are no more monsters down here, and Garbage Man takes that to heart. But, Samantha and Garbage Man get a second, And Samantha tells him everything about what's going on upstairs, like the people who have been killed and whatnot. And they've erased the paper trail that they were ever even working together, let alone the accident. But Garbage Man remembers that he printed out all of the incriminating evidence and left it in a file tucked underneath of Samantha's driver's seat. And because she doesn't clean out her car that often, it's still probably sitting there. So we see a call over to Titan Industries. And basically Samantha says, like, hey, so we have evidence that you've done these things, and we want $5 million in cash, or else we're going to go to the police with it. And they have evidence of you committing murder. And so the guy's basically like, all right, fine. So, yeah, but it seems like they're not actually interested in the money. They just want him out so they can take him out, if that makes sense. So, yeah, no, we're leaving off with that, of the confrontation next issue. I'd say it's good. I like it. I think introducing the doorway character just kind of felt a little bit cheap. Like, okay, what was the purpose of him? But overall, it was a solid issue. I give it like a 6.5, somewhere in there. And lastly, we have Tanga, written and art by Kevin McGuire. And last issue, she fought a land whale, but Zod took credit for it, and then she gave up because of Zod's incredible power. And as she's begging for mercy, Zod takes off his mask, which I didn't know was a mask, and we see that he's like a weird-looking frog dude underneath it. And he's like, at last, Tanga, you realize your true purpose is to serve my every desire, and you will be the envy of every woman in the galaxy because of it. And he plants a kiss on Tanga, and as he's doing so, Tanga like spits something down his throat, and we see that it is a thing called Brook, which I think is just beer, but like alien beer, and it's strong. And as I was like, you think that would have a physical effect on me? I'm the greatest man in the world, and there's nothing you can... Why are there two of you? So he's clearly getting drunk. Tanga goes to basically tackle him, and he fires off some energy beams. And as she takes him out from the town, he's apparently a chatty drunk, and he reveals that his power is solar-based. So she just takes him around to the dark side of the planet, buries him like a mile underground, and then seals up the hole and says like, all right, that should be enough out of him. Now I've got some questions I need answering. Because he offhandedly mentioned something about a plan by Piña, who is like getting some blue ore or something. So flies back to the Palace of Za. Nobody seems to be there until she calls around and she comes across Piña, who was the giant floating head, I guess, from issue 1 or 2. And she basically says, like, hey, Za told me everything about how you have some sort of plan. Like, what's really going on around here? Because I swear to God, I'll bury you down where Za is. And then we see this orange alien that was accompanying Piña is the one who, like, froze Tanga in midair earlier. Like, that's her ability, Fiala. And so Piña's like, you're not going to do anything to me because I'm going to eradicate you. So, yeah, Piña's evil. I didn't even remember Piña. I genuinely completely forgot about him, but he's a bad guy. As with all Tanga, it looks fine. The art's okay, but I'm just so very confused about what the hell Tanga even like is from concept to finished product. So overall, I'm gonna give that a flat 6. Mostly for the art. So yeah, that is My Greatest Invention number 5. Finally wrapping up all these plots in the next issue. I can't wait to see what any of this amounts to. And that's it. That's all the comics that came out from DC Comics this February 15th, 2012. And I gotta say, not the worst selection. I mean, I know I'm always hard on Legion, and this week Birds of Prey was certainly an issue, but it genuinely felt like everything was pretty much doing... They got in their groove. They figured out what they're doing, and it's feeling good. So if we can just keep that up for the next like 4.5 years, I'm totally down with that. But let's talk about, in the short term, what's coming up next week. So, February 22nd, 2012, we have the number 6 issues of Batman the Dark Knight, Superman, Green Lantern New Guardians, Aquaman, The Flash, The Fury of Firestorm, The Savage Hawkman, All-Star Western, Blackhawks Voodoo, Teen Titans I, Vampire, and Justice League Dark. Additionally, we have the number 3 issue of the miniseries of The Ray. Gotta say, if you haven't been tuning in for either I, Vampire or Justice League Dark, I suggest you do. I'm not going to spoil it yet, but spoiled, because now you know something's coming. Anyway, I know I'm contractually obligated to mention the Twitter at DC Comics Podcast, all one word, at DC Comics Podcast, and the Patreon Mild Fuzz TV, where you can spend just $1 to get bonus content from other people on the Mild Fuzz Network. But frankly, I don't feel like mentioning them, so I'm not going to. Instead, I'm going to go ahead, sign off for the night, start on my comics for next week, and try to buy some discount chocolates, if I'm being honest, because day after Valentine's Day, oh boy, you can get those things on the real cheap, and it only kind of dulls the pain of being alone on Valentine's Day. Yep. Anyway, thank you very much for tuning in. See you next week. And always remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.